Hello, everyone who's watching this. My name is Joseph Bentz. For those of you who know who I am, you know I hate videos. I hate getting my picture taken and all these things. And to be honest, I'm not comfortable making this video in the sense of how I feel. But what I want to say and explain in the video, I think, is more important than how I feel. And some of it might be hard to believe, but it is all true. And I don't care if people believe me or not, but because I think people who need to hear the truth will hear and understand the truth, and people who don't want to hear the truth won't accept the truth anyway. But this is only for help, not for, I don't want views. I hate attention, to be honest. I don't post. My wife is the one who does all the posting. But I'm doing this for everyone who's watching this, to try to help with love and, just say my experience and testimony I have. And, hopefully, by the end of all these videos, because it might be a two-part video, but by the end of this, hopefully everyone can, take something good out of it and know and understand that if I'm making this video, for the people who know me, if I'm making the video, it's got to be important because this is the first time I've ever posted anything like this. So I guess best place I can start is a background. And my background, I guess I could say I grew up Catholic, and I didn't really like anything to do with the church. I didn't like how they taught, how they make you feel. Just made it seem like religion was about rules and this and that and the other thing, and regulations. And especially as a young child, it just kind of seems like, what's the point? What's the purpose? So I never really took it seriously, never really got into anything. And probably around 2005, 2006, I think that's when the Ghost Hunter show, Taps, got really famous and popular. And I loved the show. I thought it was cool and interesting. And I liked how they took like the scientific approach to everything, to try to prove or disprove, hey, is there anything out there? So I watched that a lot as a kid, growing up. And then I think it was around 2008, my mom bought a house, and for lack of a better term, it was definitely haunted. I guess now, through all my research and everything, definitely a demon, or something evil, put it that way. But it all started one day. I was just sitting at home playing Xbox after high school, and in my peripheral vision, I kept seeing something go by my eyes, and I thought, it's my dog, maybe walking back and forth through the kitchen, or it's a bird flying outside. It could block the light coming in through the windows, but it just seemed kind of interesting and weird. So, I paused the game. I go towards the door. I look through the crack in the door, and I'm looking, and I see my dog walk by from one end to the other. I'm like, oh, it's just my dog. But something in my gut just kept telling me, oh no, keep looking. And I can't explain that. So I just kept looking, and I saw this black oval, pure darkness, go from the kitchen, the kitchen area, through the dining room into the living room. And it was like a pure black oval. And I could see when it came, the windows had the light coming in, but when it went in front of it, all the light was gone. Pure total darkness. So some people might have ran or got scared or whatever, but I got a little defensive, and also those people who know me know I'm jumpy. And when I get jumpy, I go right to my fist, so I'm not like a fetal position kind of person. So I rip open the door, I go out there, yell at it, say, oh, I'm not afraid of you. You can't scare me, this and that. And I'm like, don't mess with me, But I kind of thought I was going crazy. So as an experiment, I kind of said, hey, well, you can mess with my mom. She's an easy target. You know, it sounds like a horrible thing, but I thought I was crazy. I thought what I saw couldn't have been real. And for me, it was more like I just said that as an experiment to see, hey, if she experiences something after this and she has no knowledge that I said these things, maybe there's something real going on, right? So to summarize, I didn't say anything to her. Time went on. And, I think the next thing I can remember is, one night she's sleeping in her room and I wake up in my room and she's kicking the door so hard, screaming, yelling at the top of her lungs like bloody murder, banging on the door, screaming, let me in, Joe, let me in, let me in. And then so hard that the doorknob, was missing a knob on the one end, but she hit it so hard that the other knob, it just slid out the door and just fell. And I'm like, hold on, I got to get the doorknob. It fell out, It was like one of those old like 1930s doorknobs. So I open up the door. I'm like, what happened? What happened? What's going on? And she's hysterical, crying, everything. And, I'm like, what happened? What happened? She goes, oh, so, somebody was staring in over my bed. It was like a black shadow figure holding me down. I couldn't move. I couldn't this. I couldn't that. And you could just also feel the energy in the room and everything in that moment too. And I said to myself, oh my, there's something real here. What I saw, I'm not crazy. And then I couldn't really understand, like, whoa, what does that mean? You know what I mean? Like, the evidence, like, through the experience, it's like, no, what the odds of that are like impossible, right? Like that can't happen. So anyway, to summarize, as time went on, again, we started hearing more noises, things would move, all this other weird stuff. And, my mom claims that she saw like towels like levitating in the air and drop. Her and other people that were in the house, the shower curtain would just rip open. And I've heard it one time do it too, and it was closed and you hear the noise. I never saw it do it, but I heard the noise. Go back into the room, it's open. Just weird stuff, crazy stuff. I told all my friends about it. I had friends come over and we would mess with the thing, try to provoke the thing. And one of my friends got pushed down the stairs. She said that she felt a cold breeze go through her. She had 3 scratches down her back and totally blacked out, crying hysterically. And she didn't even remember what happened until she like got around the corner of the house after she got picked up. And she was with her boyfriend and one of our other mutual friends. So there was multiple witnesses. It wasn't just like me, And then I had other friends come over and listen for weird footsteps in the yard. Like, the house was just a lot of activity. And, but probably the most memorable story was my uncle was staying with us and he claims that he saw somebody in the refrigerator, or in the kitchen rather, open the refrigerator, shut the refrigerator door. And, he said, oh, maybe it was the dog or something. He looks down, the dog's asleep in front of him. And he goes, okay, it wasn't the dog. Gets up, opens my bedroom door, sees me asleep, opens my mom's bedroom door, she's asleep. He got out of there and he never went in that house, spent another night there again. He said he never would again. So come to find out, he tells us a story later. We wake up and we're like, where is he? And all of his stuff was gone. He had everything was gone. We're like, he just vanished, So there's a testimony there. I know there's more too. One time my aunt was with us and we were asking questions, trying to get the thing to do something. And, the ceiling fan just started spinning really slow. And we're looking around and we're like, is that the air conditioner kicked on? We're very skeptical at this point. We're doing it for fun. We're not thinking anything religious. We're just trying to, it was exciting, right? That's why we were doing all this. And I was 15, 14, of course you're going to have fun with it, right? The fan starts spinning real slow and then it stops. I'm like, that's weird. Let me check the switch. So I get up, I cycle the switch for the fan and I turn it on and then it turns on. and they go off. And I say to her, this was off. The fan was off. It moved. It was off. We're like, okay, that was weird. So we start asking more questions, trying to get it to do the fan, and then nothing, right? And keep in mind, there was no vents on the ceiling. There was vents on the floor of this house, right? So, I mean, and the vent was actually underneath the couch. So there was no vent, but who knows? Maybe it was airflow, right? Who knows? So my aunt at one point says, Joe, if that fan moves again, I'm out of here, right? Actually, it might have moved slow a second time. But anyway, she goes, if that fan moves again, I'm out of here. And we're talking, we forgot we even said that, right? 5 minutes go by, maybe it was 10, who knows? But time went by. And out of nowhere, the fan starts moving again. And we both look at each other like, seriously? And the fan starts moving faster and faster and faster. And the fan starts moving so fast that it's literally going left and right, like this, swaying. And we say, peace. We got out of there. We run out the front door. We go into her car. We call my mom because she was working nights. And we're telling her, oh, the fan's on. We left my dog in there. We're laughing. We're like, sorry. My dog Oreo. We're like, sorry, Oreo. Have fun with the demon, And she's just sitting on the couch, kind of looking around, looking at the fan a little bit, seriously, she was looking at the fan a little bit. And she would just, kind of sit around, whatever. And we're like, no. The second my mom pulls in the driveway, we're on the phone with her the whole time when she's driving. It was only like 10-minute drive. The whole time she's on the way home, we're on the phone with her. But the second she pulled in that driveway, dead stop. Fan just started slowing down. But by the time she could get eyes on it, it was totally stopped. So who moved the switch, right? Crazy. Another time, my aunt came over to feed we had a bird, and I don't know, I had too many pets at the time. I don't remember all of them. Past as a blur sometimes. But, so she went to feed the bird, but when she went to the house, she claims that she saw somebody in the kitchen standing there. So much so that she got on the phone, almost called the police, but called her husband and was like, hey, somebody's at this house, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, whoa, just stay on the phone with me. Nobody's in that house. So, she runs in the house, she said, and she's like, I got the water, I got the food, I just threw it in the cage at the bird and got out of there, and she never wanted to ever go in that house alone again either. Oh, there was another testimony. I had a friend visit. He brought me lunch, and, we're just talking, not even thinking about nothing. And, also people know me, I like to take my shoes off in the house. So I made him take his shoes off at the front porch, and we're sitting down eating whatever. And we hear like a basketball go downstairs, like boom, 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 boom. And we're like, what was that? And I'm like, I don't have a ball or anything like that at the top of the stairs. What the heck? So we go in the basement, we're looking on the floor. There's no ball anywhere, but we're like, no, dude, that sounded like a floor or like a ball going down the stairs, right? So we go back upstairs, and we're just like, yeah, that was weird. Hey, it's my house, it's haunted, right? He knew about the stories. And, we go upstairs, and his shoes are at the kitchen table, right? Like perfectly neatly. And he goes, hold on, Joe. He's like kind of freaked out. He's like, this was crazy. That was crazy. I heard that. That was a ball going down the stairs. And then, he said, then he realizes, hold on a second, my shoes are here. And he goes, I didn't take my shoes off here. I said, no, you took them off at the front porch. He goes, no, dude, I know I took them. Like, did I take them off here? And he was like, couldn't believe that the shoes weren't where he put them. And I remember too, a little clumsy. And if he watches this video, which I'm sure he will, he'll know who I'm talking. He knows I'm talking about, but he just threw his shoes off, like one over here, one over there. And they were like perfectly neat, set there. He put those shoes on. He got out the door. He didn't even finish his food. He left his food there. He's like, no, I'm out. See ya. There's another story where I heard footsteps go up the attic, or rather my uncle and my mom both heard the footsteps, and I heard the footsteps because my bedroom, for example, my bed was here and the attic stairs were here. So I heard someone walking up the attic stairs through the wall, and I heard my mom and my uncles like getting kind of freaked out or saying something. So I was like, what's going on with all this noise? I thought maybe somebody might have been walking into the basement. So I was just like, oh, it sounds, they're kind of freaking out. Let me go look. So I go look, and my uncle says, oh, Joe, you're not going to believe this, Joey. We heard footsteps go straight up, stop, and it went to the right, and it went straight that way and stopped. And then that was it. And he's never been in our attic. And at that house, the only way you could walk in that attic is up the stairs, stop, right, and go straight without hitting your head. Otherwise, you'd have to like lean down like this, because it was, in the center is where you had the most headroom. So once again, he's never been in the attic, and he described the layout of the attic. So, I thought that was pretty compelling. And I do have a video actually of me alone in the house with my dog. And I didn't discover this until, I don't know, probably 5 years later, 6 years later. But there's like a humming and a singing in the background of the video. And that's like probably the only evidence I have to this date about this. This is just all taking my word for it. But my last two stories, the two craziest stories, I'll save for the last, and I'll come up with the solution and how it ties in to what I really want to tell. One day I'm just sitting on the mattress in my bed, and I was with somebody at the time, and she was sitting on the bed with me, and we started hearing like this music playing, and my mom was in the kitchen on the computer, and we started hearing like a little faint music. I'm like, you hear that? She goes, no. I'm like, here, turn off the TV. We turn off the TV, make sure our phones aren't playing anything. We hear this faint noise. I'm like, what is this noise? It sounds weird. It sounds like a little music. And I said to my mom, hey mom, are you playing anything in the kitchen? And she goes, no. And I went out, I checked, because, she could barely open an email sometimes, and no, nothing was playing. So I went back in the room, you could still hear it, and it got like a little louder. I'm like, it sounds like it's coming from under the bed. So I look under the bed, there's like an iPod, a little iPod station, and I'm listening under the bed, and there's nothing playing. It's off, there's nothing plugged in. I'm like, what's going on? But it sounded louder under the mattress. So I'm thinking there's got to be a device, something under the mattress. I look everywhere, nothing. But then I get up and I put my ear on the mattress, and it was loud. Like when I put my ear to the mattress, it was loud. And I'm listening, and it's like a melody. And I'm like, it sounds so familiar. And it got louder and louder and louder. But only when my ear was on the mattress did it keep getting louder, right? So who I was with, she puts her ear on the thing, and she hears it too. So it's not me going crazy. There's another witness, right? It started getting louder, and then it stopped. And then we're thinking, like, how do you explain this? Like, how did I have like music coming out of my mattress? It doesn't make any sense. So then I couldn't get the melody out of my head, and it sounded so familiar, I couldn't remember. But I said, no, this is from a horror movie. I know it because I love horror movies at the time, right? That's all I would watch, horror movies, ghost movies, that's all so, it's a little bit of a bias, I guess. So maybe I kind of wanted these things to happen because I liked the experience, I wanted it, right? So we finally find the song, and it was the Exorcist theme song from the original Exorcist movie. And we're both like, this is ridiculous. We can't believe this is real. So, yeah, I can't explain that one still to this day. I don't know what. Of course, whenever you have this kind of activity in a house, at the time in that house, there was a lot of arguments, anger, bad energy. People would come over and just, you could feel it. Honestly, you could feel this thickness, this heaviness, like you couldn't describe it. And things would always break, things would always make noise, like, it was just bad environment. So my mom and I, we were like kind of having like a little argument. I don't even remember what it was about, but we're kind of fighting, yelling, whatever. And then, whole truth, nothing but the truth. The refrigerator, okay, literally started like dancing, left, right, left, right, left, right, like this, right? And the doors are like kind of shaking open a little bit. All the stuff on the top shaking around, moving around. And, we're both looking at each other like, what the heck? And then there was this loud, like banging pipe in the basement. It sounded like somebody had a pipe wrench, was going bang, bang. And I'm like thinking to myself logically, right? Because I'm very scientific. I like making sense of everything, and I'm skeptical, right? So I always need evidence. Every time someone tells me something, I'm always like, okay, great. Now let me figure it out and see if they're right. And then, you know what I'm saying? I always question everything. That's just how I am. how the Science Channel always is, right? Question everything. Don't just take things at face value. Don't just accept what someone tells you. Think for yourself, right? So I'm thinking, well, a pipe's not going to make a refrigerator move because, yes, it had an ice maker. Yes, it had a water feed, but you're talking like a little clear PVC looking hose or plastic nylon, whatever it is, little hose to feed it. And it's tapped into a pipe. That pipe's not going to make a refrigerator move. So I can't explain where all that energy to make those things move come from. But it happened. And and my mom was on the phone with my grandmother at the time, and she heard it. She thought something happened or one of us snapped or something, she didn't know what to think. And we were both silent. And I could just hear her saying, Pam, like, what's going on? Right. And, we're both sitting there like, whoa, okay, enough is enough. Right. And that's when we're like, okay, enough is enough. The refrigerator just freaking tried to chase us out of the house pretty much. So we're like, okay, enough's enough. So we're like, all right, let's come up with a game plan. So I started researching what could this be, how to get rid of it, blah, blah, blah. So I'm looking up poltergeist. So I learned about poltergeist, and that's like, people say that's like a mind manifestation. I'm not going to get into all that. So but I get into all this demonology research. Which one could it be? Because I know in all the movies, you have to say its name, you have to know its name to get it to be exorcised, all this stuff. So I started looking at all that, researching all that, and I started learning, like sage gets rid of them, and crystals and salts and all this stuff. So I try all of that, right? I do the sage stuff, I do the salt stuff, the crystal stuff, whatever, stupid stuff, and nothing's working, right? You still feel the bad energy. She's still seeing things in her room, having these experiences. People still feel uncomfortable to come there, right? And, you get to a point where you just get used to it, but you still don't, you feel like you're being watched all the time, You always feel eyes on you. You always feel like at any moment, like it's like fight or flight. And like, that's the best way to describe the energy, fight or flight, but it always fed off of fear. You know what I mean? Whenever there was stress and a vulnerability in somebody's life, like whether if it's finances or emotion or whatever, it finds that little crack in the door and exposes that. And for all of us in that house at the time, all of us had all those things, because everyone goes through things in their life, right? And everyone makes mistakes. So there was plenty of vulnerability and everything in that moment. So that's why it had so much strength, and we had nothing to defend ourselves against, right? What are we, right? It can see and interact with us, but we can't see it, right? So just like oxygen fills your lungs, you don't know it's there, but it's there. You don't know all the other chemical compounds that enter into your lungs, but it exists, it's there, right? But and your eyes can only see 40% or whatever it is of the light spectrum, but you got infrared, ultraviolet, your eyes can't see it, but it's there, right? So technically everything gives off light, which is infrared, but your eyes can't see it, right? Unless you're in absolute zero. Nothing worked. So I'm like, okay, what are we going to do? Nothing's working. So the last resort, and I think this was my last resort because of my Catholic upbringing and all that stuff. I kind of wanted nothing to do with church or religion or anything. And I never trusted the Bible. I didn't believe in it. I was like, oh, it's written by men. It's written by people over thousands a year. It's going to get misinterpreted. It's going to get changed. It's going to get manipulated because people are evil, or people have their own agendas, right? So I thought, oh, the Vatican changed it, this changed. So I never believed in anything in it. I was like, I had no interest. So I say, you know what? Last resort is an exorcism, just like they do in the movies, right? Because, I've seen enough movies and shows and influence to know what to do. So, or at least I thought I did. And so my mom goes, she gets the holy water from the church because I thought you needed that at the time. And, I think she left the house because she didn't want to be around during it. I was just there alone, and I mustered up the courage and I said, no, God help me. But, I was like, if you're there, help me, But I went around the house with the water. I started in the basement, did every corner. And I said, oh, in the name of Jesus, get out of this house. You're not welcome here. You have no power here. I went around the whole house, every level, every window, everything, till I got to a point in the attic. And I just felt something in my, you know, sense like, hey, no, stop here, leave it here. But I crossed the line. I said, hey, look, you act up again, you do anything again, we're going to do this again, and we'll just get you out for good. And I made a line with the Holy Water. I said, don't cross this line in Jesus' name, and you have to stay there. So then after I got done with that, I went downstairs, and I'm not exaggerating, I felt peace, and you could almost like feel and sense like this calm, and like that heaviness was just gone. And you could almost smell like the freshest air, if that makes any sense, like just fresh outside air. And I said, wow, maybe that worked, right? But I did it with faith, but I was still skeptical. Still to this day, always question everything all the time. Even when I see the proof, I'm like, how do I know the proof is the proof? And then I get proof for the proof, and I'm like, let's prove the proof of the proof. This is how I am. So, my mom comes home and she goes, how'd it go? Oh, and then she just kind of goes like, oh, you know what? It feels different in here. I'm like, right? And after that, people would come over, or people from school would still be like, hey, I want to come and mess with your ghost thing. I'm like, hey, you can come over, but it's different now. And they're like, really? What happened? And I would just say, I don't know, because I was a little embarrassed at the time to admit it. But a couple of people I told, hey, I did exorcism, it worked, but I didn't tell it to everybody. So then people would come over and they'd be like, yeah, dude, it's not the same. Like something was missing, but what was missing was the bad stuff. The only thing that worked at getting that evil spirit entity, whatever you want to call it, to stop having power over us and everything was when we used Jesus' name. That's the only thing it listened to. It didn't listen to rocks, it didn't listen to sage, it didn't listen to oils, it didn't listen to all the other crap that you might hear about. The only thing it listened to was Jesus. So I started thinking to myself, well, I know that the ghost stuff is real. I've seen it myself. I've experienced it myself. My family has experienced it because of this place. My friends have experienced it because of this place. And, I was like, I know one side of the coin is real, which means if there's a tails, there has to be a heads, right? So I knew, okay, if it listened to the name of Jesus, then that means that Jesus has to be real. So that's why, if you look at my one bio on Facebook, I put, religion, I just put Jesus because of that experience, right? Because I knew, hey, I know he's real, because the demons listened to him. They didn't listen to anything else, right? With everything that's going on in the world today, when you see people, angry, evil, crazy, these things are around us. These things can interact, influence, and you need to know that you have the power to overcome it. But you only have the power to overcome it with Jesus' name. That's it. And some people don't want to hear it. Some people don't want to believe it. But that's my experience. And that's only part. If you don't believe me, if you need proof, I'll send you any proof I have, because I have done other investigations. I've gotten EVP evidence, a little bit of other evidence, but the evidence isn't for views. It's not for likes. It's not for anything. It's just for people who genuinely want to understand and or need the proof to believe, like I needed the proof to believe, right? And it's only to help people. That's it. Because I think a lot of people need that proof or that sureness, because everything in this world is so uncertain. And I guess in the next video that I'll make after this, when you hear my real testimony and then how it was backed and how it's all connected, I think that will be the most help. But this is just mainly for the background, so people can understand kind of where it started and where it led to. But keep in mind also, after this experience I had, I kind of focused on the one side of that coin I mentioned, only on the tails. I knew the heads existed, but I didn't believe the Bible and the words in the Bible. I didn't believe in born again. I didn't believe Christian, Catholic, whatever. But I knew Jesus was real. But I didn't believe the Bible because I was like, oh, it's written by men, and men can twist it, manipulate it, whatever. But then you think about dimensions, right? So if you look at one dimension, left, right, it can't interact with up, down. It can only go left, right. But two dimension could go up, down, and see left, right. So if you go third dimension, fourth dimension, fifth dimension, listen, if you go watch Ant-Man and the Wasp, right, Quantumania, whatever the movie's called, go into the microscopic world within worlds and travel through time, right? That goes to show you that the theory that there's so much around you that you can't see and feel because your body can only interact with so many things, right? It only has so many senses, which is probably by design and by purpose, of course, right? But when you really think about it deeply, it makes so much sense that, how people say like, oh, the Bible is perfect, the word is perfect, and all this stuff. If it was inspired by somebody who was above time and knew how people would manipulate it, or knew what to say and when to say and who to say it to make it last so long, you essentially have the timeline. Just like, for example, another Marvel reference, if you look at Loki, you have the one timeline with all the branches. If you were able to know every branch and the main timeline, all these branches, you could predict everything. So you would know, oh, I got to tell Isaiah this then, I got to tell that, and then it will all make sense. But in the next video, it will all make sense. But sorry if it was, a little awkward and everything for me, because I don't like doing these things.